What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am Lieutenant Nathaniel Flint of the Landship Scorpios, and today I think the best way to start off on all the new information that has been released is to dive into the Battle of Rivet rulebook and do a crash course on the rules of Rivet Wars, or Rivet Wars Reloaded. I'm hoping to keep this nice and quick and sectioned so that we can get through it quickly and simply, but also turn these into shorts so that the word of Rivet Wars spreads. So what we are doing first today is just kind of going through the rules and trying to make note and point out any changes or any things from classic Rivet Wars so that when we are discussing units and all these things later on down the line, we have a baseline context here on the channel for what those terms mean. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into this. So super quick baseline. In Rivet Wars Reloaded, we have a variety of cards. There are stat cards for unit stats, which a lot of the rules will use. There are mission cards, which decide one of the alternate win conditions. There are action cards, which both players use to try to get an edge on the battlefield. There are reference cards, which both players will use to get references for things like Deviation or their enemy targeting order. And then, of course, there's solo and cross-faction stat cards, which we have not been able to pour over these at this time. So that will probably be down the road a little bit later. So here we have game tiles, which are the base level tiles that come in different sides. The score trackers here for measuring victory points. We have feature tiles, which are strategic objectives as well as bunkers. But these are also double-sided with trenches on the other side to help expand and customize trench networks for the game boards. We have terrain, which are things like minefields and tank traps, but also barbed wire that can be placed down. And as we talk about rules, there are flag tokens, deployment tokens, rivet and damage tokens, the score tokens for the scorecard, and then marker tokens that are used for various reasons in different scenarios, but mainly for covering up missions that are not available to be completed at this time. Also, these are the gas tokens and shield tokens that they'll also mention in the rules. Gas has a gassier side and a less gassy side to be flipped to let you know how long they have until they're removed from the board. And in the base set in Rivet Wars Reloaded, we of course have the Independent Allied States, shortened to the Allies, and the Imperial Blighton Empire, shortened to the Blight. We're going to skip game setup only because this is something we can do later in a different video, but they do use one of the training examples as your very first game, and they walk you through how to set it up and what everything means. So the first thing you do for a standard game setup is you choose the scenario and set it up based on the scenario requirements, and you also make sure both players fully understand the rules and special rules, win conditions, etc. for the game you're about to play. As little confusion as possible. Also, if you're going to throw in any kind of homebrew or anything like that, right at the setup of the game is the best place for that. Rivet Wars Reloaded will be played on the battlefield, which will be made up by a bunch of different tiles. This lets us know the makeup of those tiles and what the battlefield will actually be looked at. So this is where we're going to start divulging into some newer stuff or some changes on classic Rivet Wars. So let's start the video officially here. The battlefield terminology is that we have the tile, which is any of the set tiles that can be placed down to create the map that we will be playing on, the battlefield. Those tiles are made up of areas, which are these 2x2 squares These are areas. These used to be called grids. These are now called areas. Depending on the tile, it can be made up of multiple areas, as well as strategic objectives and bunkers count as areas when they're on their own. Now, these little squares that make up an area, the 2x2, will be called squares. This is important for attacking order as well as deployment order when you are ranging troops in an area as part of your movement or your deployment. So it's important to keep in mind squares. Units will take up anywhere from 1 square, 2 square, or all 4 squares. So you need to keep in mind of what unit you're playing, that you can only have 4 squares worth of units in an area. Open ground is a new one that they have pointed out. Open ground is simply any area of the tile that doesn't include any terrain or a feature tile. There are a few instances that call out open ground specifically, so it's important to differentiate that so that is a little bit easier. Each scenario calls out what areas on a tile are considered territory, and the ones that are not defined as territory for one player or the other are considered no man's land. A lot of action cards, unit abilities, things of that nature call out whether or not something is friendly territory or no man's land or enemy territory. So it's important to make sure both players fully understand where the territory is when you are setting up a scenario, or when you are homebrewing a scenario and you need to set up what zones are what. Winning the game. Winning the game in Rivet Wars Reloaded can be done in 2 ways now. This is new. You can do the classic way of winning a Rivet Wars game by gaining the number of victory points listed on the scenario or agreed upon for homebrew before the game begins. Victory points can be achieved by in-game scenario rules, destroying or defeating units that have bounties, as well as holding and keeping control of strategic objectives, which we'll talk about a little later. The second way is with mission cards. The scenario will describe how many mission cards are needed to be achieved in order to be considered completed and winning the game. Mission cards are a side thing. Starting at the second round, the first mission card will be revealed, and they're revealed in order as the game gets longer. If you find yourself falling behind in victory points, you may want to concentrate on the mission cards and achieving those. For most of the standard scenarios, a player needs to win 3 mission cards in order to win the game that way instead of through victory points. However, some scenarios and some instances will change that. So again, this is something that should be agreed upon before entering the game so that both sides are fully aware of the win conditions. A round is unlocking a mission card, first player's turn, second player's turn. Once both players have gone, the round will reset. The turn sequence is now made up of 5 phases. These phases are the first phase, the new control phase. The second phase, the deployment phase. Third phase, the combat phase. The fourth phase, the movement phase. And the last phase, the wrap-up phase. We're going to dive into these really quickly. The control phase involves first drawing any cards that you need to get up to your maximum. So this includes drawing a single action card per control phase to a maximum of 3 in your hand, and placing flag tokens on any strategic objective that you currently occupy with people that don't have flag tokens. So a player can have no more than 3 action cards in their hands, and no more than 1 flag token on a strategic objective at a time. Once these are met or skipped, It is then time for them to move on to the next phase. The deployment phase involves receiving the amount of deployment points and rivet tokens that you are allotted based on the scenario or agreed upon rules of your homebrewed game. After which you are allowed to spend those deployment points and rivet tokens from your reserve of troops, which are the troops available for use to you as described by the scenario, or based on the amount of expansions you own. You deploy them in your deployment zones as noted by your deployment tokens and the scenario rules. And of course, any unspent deployment points at the end of the deployment phase are wasted, so use them or lose them. And any unspent rivet tokens can be gathered to be used on future deployment phases down the road. Please note that plugs, which is a defining feature of Rivet Wars, does make a return in Rivet Wars Reloaded. Plugs are to be deployed in pluggable units that do not have plugs at the moment, or as long as they have an available plug slot for them, while they are in friendly territory, unless the scenario denotes otherwise. Also keep track of hero units when they are deployed. Hero units are unique units and are only allowed to be deployed once per game per form. If a hero unit is destroyed, you are not allowed to redeploy them as that unit. However, if a hero unit exists in multiple forms, say a hero cavalry unit and a hero plug unit, then you are allowed to redeploy that hero as the alternate form that was lost. After both versions of that hero is used, you're not really allowed to deploy them for the rest of the game. Then we move on to combat. Before you move, you have to shoot. So this is the combat phase. You check your attack sequences and range of your units, and you move from area to area, picking a unit and then attacking who you can based on their range and distance and other factors. As combat has worked before, you have to attack the units that you have dice to roll against. So in the example given here, let's zoom in on that just a little bit. So in the example given here, the riflemen can only attack armor type 1. So they can't attack this Sturmpanzer sitting here looking deadly, but they have a range of 2. So as with attack and movement, they only get 1 diagonal to hit people. So this would be 1, 2 to attack this guy, 1, 2 to attack this guy, and 1, 2 to attack this guy. However, you can notice that it would require 2 diagonals, 1, 2, to get this guy over here, which he can't reach. And he doesn't have a range of 3. 1, 2, 3 to hit this guy. Simple, easy, not a lot has changed there. We didn't touch on unit cards in this video, but we will in a later one when we go over unit cards. However, you look at their attack profiles on their unit card. It tells you how many attacks they get and of what type. And then it tells you how many dice they get across the various armor types. An attack hits if either of the dice hit 5 or more, which since they're D6, it'll be a 5 or a 6. That includes any bonuses or penalties against them. Otherwise, the attack is considered a miss. A unit must make all their attacks at once or choose to stop attacking before attacking another unit. If an attack has a range of 0, it has 0 dice. These values cannot be increased by special rules or other bonuses. This is really important as there are an increased amount of special abilities and conditions that will increase the amount of dice rolled against certain armor types. However, with this rule, you are not, if you have a 0 in something, you are not allowed to get an extra dice against something. So an example we will use is big old Sergeant Ajax here. Amazing. Sergeant Ajax has high explosive. High explosive gives +1 die when attacking armor type 3 and armor type 4. With these rules, where a 0 is a 0, Sergeant Ajax would be unable to buff high explosives to a rifleman who only gets 0 dice against those armor types. So abilities that grant bonuses are really better used by the units who already are able to act on those bonuses and just lets them do bigger damage. Let's quickly talk about the attack specials. We have here first a blast attack. A blast attack is you get to make an attack against every unit in the targeted area. Carpet bomb is a new one. A carpet bomb attack allows this attack to target 2 areas within the range that are adjacent to each other. And you get to attack every unit in both of those areas. So these are powerful attacks that are sweeping. Again, thematically, a carpet bomb. A chain attack is from classic Rivet Wars. When this attack hits an enemy unit, whether or not that's destroyed, the attack gets to chain to the next unit in the attack order and keep going until you're through the area. These are powerful if you can get good enemies that can hit a lot of units in an area. Concentrated attack. Most units with concentrated attack can get multiple attacks. However, these attacks must be within the same area. So you get multiple attacks, but they have to all take place in the same area. And of course, gas attack, especially with the Blight Empire. The gas attacks have a special little gas marker. They usually hit hard and spawn a gas token. However, some units have immunity to gas, which does protect them from attacks that spawn gas tokens. That doesn't mean you still can't target them and spawn that gas token, but it does mean you might want to consider firing at a different area. Also, gas attacks now ignore bolster defense special rule, giving them that extra edge to attack highly defended areas like bunkers. Now, gas attacks can have their own stats and things based on the unit who is making that gas. However, generic gas tokens that are left behind on the battlefield all share a stats and attacks. So you can find that here, where they all are technically one attack, 2/2/2 across the board, and then they ignore the bolster defense special rule. That is really important and really cool. Gas clouds are deviated at the start of each player's turn. Then you remove each face down gas token before flipping all the face up gas tokens. If a gas token moves into an area containing any unit, or if any unit moves into an area with a gas cloud and they are not immune to gas, you need to resolve that gas attack against them. Next is a section about targeting attack order, and there are some things that we really want to take out of this. The first one is that you must attack first the first unit in the first most targeting attack slot. So this will affect how you are able to attack. So we'll use the example that they gave here. You have a Schlitten that is firing into this grid. The Schlitten can only attack armor type 1 units. So because we have attack order 1, and then we have attack order 2 here, and then the rifleman's in attack order 3, because the Schlitten cannot attack armor type 2 of the rocket cycle, it is not able to target the rifleman in the third slot. You must deal with this rocket cycle before the Schlitten is free to deal with the rifleman. So, in this instance, you would want your first attack of this area to be with the Panzerfaust to fight against this rocket cycle in hopes that they will destroy them, freeing the way for the Schlitten to attack this rifleman. In the reverse, it is the same thing. If we reverse this, the Schlitten is in the attack area 1, while the Panzerfaust is in the area 2. This rifleman is unable to attack the Schlitten and will be unable to attack the Panzerfaust until the rocket cycle has a chance to deal with them and hopefully destroy them and remove them from the board. This means that you are able to shield units of more importance behind units with higher armor types or with different armor types that need to be targeted first. This gives a lot of weight to special attacks like flat grid attacks or specials like sniper that will basically bypass the attack order. Causing damage is pretty easy. A hit is a hit at 5 or plus. If you roll 3 dice and 2 of them are 5 plus, that is only 1 hit. However, there are specials that will apply more damage based on types of hits, but those are described on a case-by-case basis with the units that they affect. The amount of health or the amount of damage a unit can take is displayed on their stat card. So if a unit has the same amount or more damage than what's on their health version of their stat card, they are considered defeated or destroyed and removed from the battlefield. Shield tokens are in Rivet Wars Reloaded, provided by the guard dog, as well as some other instances in scenarios. Shield tokens are applied to a unit and they will take the place of the first damage that happens against that unit. So instead of counting a damage against their health, you will instead remove the shield unit that has been applied. And when a unit with bounties, which you'll see here on the unit card, is removed from play and has been destroyed or defeated, you will offer up 1 victory point per bounty listed on their card. So with this M1 Ostrich, there are 2 bounties. That's 2 victory points to the Blight player who destroyed it. Here is a rule that is important to mention. If deviation or any other effect causes a player to accidentally or intentionally destroy a unit of their own with bounty symbols attributed to them, their opponent will still increase their VP score for the bounties. So this means that if through deviation and you deviate something off the map and the unit is considered destroyed or lost, or if someone uses an effect maliciously to destroy a unit before you can whittle down their health and be destroyed, you're not going to gain any benefit. Matter of fact, you're giving that benefit over to the player. They still will get those 2 victory points for that unit being removed from play. That is a very good thought process for the design, to just keep things being a little fairer, I suppose. Deviation we've talked about a bit. Deviation happens with many types of cards. It comes up in deployment, in attacks, in action card usage. There's a lot of reasons why things should deviate on the field. What they've added is a D8 to the Rivet Wars set in Reloaded, and we now have deviation cards that are reference cards. You'll have those down on the board. Orientation is either decided by the scenario or decided ahead of time by the players. You keep that down, then you'll roll that D8 and it will tell you where the deviation is based on the area that you're deviating from. It's simple, it's easy, and it doesn't burn through action cards when you're trying to resolve deviation. So this is going to be quite helpful. I see this as a good thing. We finally make it to the movement phase. Moving is very similar to classic Rivet Wars. Each unit has a movement value or a special that augments that movement value, and they can move based on that. You only get 1 diagonal. So in the situation given, we're looking at a rocket cycle with a movement of 2. So a lot of things affect movement. You cannot move through grids with enemies or grids you cannot normally move through. These are things like, for this rocket cycle, this tank trap that does not allow non-infantry to move through it. So they can move 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. They can move through grids that allies are in, and they can move that one diagonal. So he's not able to go 1, 2, all the way over here, or all the way over here. Also, if a scenario has blank space, like a void, this was recently brought up in an FAQ on the Discord. Voids do not count as areas. They are not considered areas for the map or for territory or anything like that, which means they cannot be used as areas to determine distance for attacks or movement. People can't attack through them, and people can't move through them. They are not considered areas. Whether or not you agree with this, depending on the scenario you're doing, that is very important to denote when doing a lot of movement, especially with the air units, where areas are going to come up, and attacks. So you might want to justify that before a scenario if you're homebrewing something. But as far as all of our official scenarios go, blank void areas that are created by little bridges of trenches or the way the tiles are set up, they're not considered areas, so they cannot be used to calculate movement or attacks. And of course, the wrap-up phase. The wrap-up phase lets you remove any enemy flag tokens for strategic objectives or strategic areas with flag tokens that you now occupy. Lets you gain VPs for strategic objectives you occupy. Occupy meaning you have friendly units in them and or you have flag tokens in with them. And you check the victory conditions for the scenario, because if during the wrap-up phase you meet victory conditions of the scenario, you win right then and there. Let's quickly talk about the terrain. There have been some changes in Rivet Wars terrain. So here we have trenches. Trenches have a lot of certain special rules, and action cards and abilities interact with trenches. Trenches are on base tiles as well as on the backs of strategic objectives and bunkers. So you can use them to fill out a trench network or customize a battlefield to look a little bit more unique. And they are affected. These used to be called duck boards in classic Rivet Wars. They are now called trenches. Barbed wire. Infantry units cannot enter an area with barbed wire in it. If any other unit type enters that area, it kind of crushes the barbed wire and you're allowed to remove it. And then infantry can enter that area. Going this way, let's do strategic objectives. Strategic objectives, only infantry units may enter a strategic objective, and they count as trenches and are a source of victory points in most scenarios. Bunkers, only infantry units may enter a bunker. Bunkers count as trenches, and they grant the special ability Bolster Defense 1 to infantry units who are within them. Tank traps are set up. Non-infantry units cannot enter that area with a tank trap. However, new to Rivet Wars Reloaded, tank traps can be targeted and attacked and destroyed. They technically have an armor class of 4 and a health of 1. So they are quite beefy, but some of the bigger high explosive units can destroy them to clear the path for other units to enter that area. And minefields. Minefields resolve a 2 dice attack roll against any unit that moves into that area. If this attack hits a tank unit, then that unit will take 2 damage instead of the normal 1. After the attack is made, you will remove the minefield from play. So this is really good because Rivet Wars Reloaded basically makes minefields deadly for all units, including infantry. And they can be removed after an attack is made. So it's always a gamble to enter, but you can also strategically I guess, sacrifice a unit to remove minefields from play so that that area is now free for the other units to go on after them. And minefields will be a lot deadlier against tank units, making them just that much more important to strategically put onto maps or to use action cards that spawn minefields or barbed wire more strategically. Special rules will be touched on as special rules happen, but they affect the game on a unit-by-unit basis, so some units have special abilities that help them stick out from the crowd. The important thing to note is that special units affect the unit that they are attributed to, or if specials on plugs affect the plug as well as any unit they are plugged into. Actions, some specials are actions. These take the place of attacking. So like in a lot of TTRPGs, attacking is basically your action, is an attack action. And then these special abilities will take that place in the combat phase. Instead of attacking, you will fulfill their action. And as always, buffs are any special for a unit that unit buffs that special. It affects the unit themselves as well as any unit that they share an area with. They will buff that unit. We have a special rules glossary here, but that is probably a video for another day to go through them. And to be honest, we'll probably be going through them when we talk about the other units and their cards and what their abilities are. So I might save this for another day. And with that, that's basically it. That is the basic, dirty, blasting through as quickly as I can rundown of the Rivet Wars Reloaded rules. There are special rules with the Aerial Aces expansion that we will cover at a later date. There are other rules that are affected by specials and other units. We are going to handle those separately. Also, it's important to read completely the scenario you intend to play to make note of any special rules in the scenario. These kind of special rules can include swapping out bunkers and strategic objectives based on certain conditions to give that back and forth to players. It could affect moving deployment zones or changing which player can achieve victory points based on strategic objective holdings and which ones achieve it based on the amount of rounds that have happened. There's a lot of stuff that are covered on a scenario by scenario basis. With that, we're going to call this video good. It's probably gone on plenty long enough, but I'm very happy to just kind of get through this so that we can start talking about the newer stuff and how all of this works together to implement this. Depending on when this video gets out, please remember that the second wave of stuff, which is Nemoans and Aerial Aces and a bunch of unit cards, is up for feedback right now until November 11th. So please go and pore over those PDFs, find typos, find incorrect unit art, find as much stuff as you can, and just pore over that. And remember that there is a feedback form on the notice on the update 36 on the Kickstarter page. There's a specific form they want that feedback funneled through, so do fill out that form and submit your feedback. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, we're gonna end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciated this very much. Able to sum up a lot of new stuff, but also just crash through the rules, get a nice little refresher, and move right on to other newer and better stuff. If there's something specific you want covered in some kind of Rivet Wars Reloaded video, I'm going to be trying to cover as much as possible, but let me know in the comments down below if there's something specific you want focused on sooner. I will try to cover, for instance, the Nemoans and kind of going over all their stuff, as well as units and just talking about implications of certain units with others, talking about how they all play together, just spending more time thinking about that. Aerial Aces is going to be a whole bag that needs time to be talked through and stuff. So there's a lot to go through that I'm just super excited to go through. Going through action cards, the missions, how we think those will be used, scenarios, so much. So I'm looking forward to covering all the new information that we have learned about Rivet Wars. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Links down below to all the community spaces, and we look forward to seeing you. Remember, November 11th, get that feedback in. Every little bit helps, even if it's redundant. So find those typos, find those mistakes, find those confusing wording, whatever you want to tell them. Now is the time before November 11th. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Check out the other Rivet Wars videos on the channel. There definitely is going to be some newer ones coming out. So, we'll see you.